Да, коллеги, всем привет.
Hi everyone. I can see that the audience is actually growing. The number of people present here is growing, and this deep tech topic is becoming more and more relevant.
Поделиться какими-то инсайтами. И как уже говорил Сергей, вот есть эти два разных
We will try to share some insights, and as Sergey said, there are two big worlds: world of business and the world of science.
инвестируя.
And they're quite different. But we have been investing for decades to the research and science, and we see that this convergence of the science and business becomes not just a wish, but a reality. And today we are going to not only talk about the facts and the cases and talk about our mistakes that we have faced, but how to ensure the proper cooperation between the engineers and the entrepreneurs and tech entrepreneurs. We have Danila Shaposhnikov, who is the co-founder and the partner of Phystech Ventures, and Marsel Gumerov, a founder of AppScience. So the panelists from the tech business and from the science, from tech, from deep tech. So we will try to get some fantastic insights from them, and I would like to give the floor to Danila. Danila, please, can you share your experience? Your entrepreneurship investment life is pretty hard. Can you share some experiences? Yes, thank you very much, Evgeny. I would like to not really talk about my journey as an investor and how I became an investor, but I had a parallel track when in 2013, with two scientists from Russia, I founded my own company. I started a company. It was called Mit Energy. It was then renamed as High Point. This company was developing and producing the hydrogen batteries, the fuel elements for the accumulation of energy for planes and helicopters. And back then in 2013, we were ahead of the trend of the hydrogen technologies in the world, especially in Russia. No one was even mentioning these technologies in Russia, the hydrogen technologies. We raised investments. We have built a production facility in Chernogolovka near Moscow, but the new technology market in Russia has already had some challenges, and all new emerging technologies in Russia were usually met with a much lack of enthusiasm. Although one Russian state company, despite all of that, made an offer to buy our company, and we have started the process of negotiating the deal. It was going for 2.5 years. Our company almost died as we were negotiating and talking, because it was absolutely, it was a hideous and very mindless process, and we decided with the co-founders to change the vector, to change the perspective. We went to Alchemist, that's an American accelerator. We have gone through the acceleration program after winning the selection procedure. And thanks to that, we got connected with American investors, and we were able to raise the next round outside of Russia. Unfortunately, not in Russia. And we also got a lot of customers. A company signed an agreement with Airbus, with the helicopter producing companies. And the cherry on top was the offer to buy our company from the investor, not from Russia, not a Russian investor. And in 2022, when the special military operation was raging, our company was bought, and the production facilities was moving from Chernogolovka to another country. So, you know what, in a nutshell, to sum up really, before 2022, technologies was, people were kind of interested in technologies, but it was import substitution on paper. We have delivered the most number of technology innovations in oil and gas sector. Mostly imported technologies are bought by the Big Four, and the Russian technologies are kind of a special case. So it's either the commodity or some technologies, very selected technologies. The situation is paradoxical for the Russian company to get the contracts with the vertically integrated oil and gas companies in Russia. Russian companies had to go abroad to the Middle East. They had to create their brand in the Middle East to get customers there. And only after that, our Russian companies were ready to work with these Russian companies, like TGT Oil. And we have a lot of cases like that. And this is the situation that we're facing. But what has happened now? What do I see now is that the interest towards technologies in Russia is real. It's not just on paper. Why did that happen? Well, we're isolated, the key technologies are cut off, and even if you can deliver something through the imports, it is 2-3 times more expensive, no guarantees, no maintenance, and I mean, these purchases is very high-risk purchases, really, if you talk about these foreign technologies. And what are we seeing right now? Tech companies with 100 million rubles per year annual revenue, or even more than that, investment funds are scrutinizing these companies for investment rounds. But who is competing with the venture funds? You won't believe that. Russian companies and corporations that are bidding to buy these companies on these stages, and they compete with funds to get the to push their investments there. That means that our economy has finally matured enough to buy Russian and invest in Russian technologies. What is the insight? I would like to suggest to tech entrepreneurs to create more tech companies, mostly tech companies. Now, I appreciate the fact that you are going to tell me that the 20% interest rate, that's pretty challenging. You can't raise the money, venture funds, business angels decided to go to the deposits or some other classical assets yet. The country is pretty interested in technologies. The technologies are in demand, and there is a market, and you will say, okay, Russian economy is pretty small, but if you take the Russian economy as an isolated case, it's in the top 10 economy in the world, in the list of top 10 economies in the world. Now, as for the unicorns, maybe we wouldn't be able to build unicorns, although that might be possible, but it will be challenging. But companies with revenue streams of tens of billions of rubles, I mean, you can build them, and these companies already exist. You can buy them. I mean, they can be bought for a huge sum of money, and they can deliver great income to the companies and investors, and they can also deliver great dividend income. So I think you should act here and now. But it's not enough to just make calls for that. Investment ecosystem has to be supported in Russia. Without venture funds, without venture money, I think the company cannot appear just like that from a financial standpoint of view. If you look at American or Chinese economy, we are all seeing how tech companies are growing there. They're growing very quickly. They're raising funds, rounds of investments very quickly, and get contracts. There are thousands of venture funds working in these countries. What should you do to make these funds appear? Usually it works like that. There are some funds of funds that invest in funds and who then search the teams to invest in. Or there are insurance companies or other companies that kind of can invest some part of their capital in the funds or in the funds of funds. And this is something that we don't have in Russia. And I think our task, nationwide task, is to develop and support the development of the funds of funds, and institutional investors have to redesign their policies. And this would maybe give some boost. I would like to stress the following. Where do tech companies come from? Deep technologies more often than not, are emerging based on some universities and research centers. But in our universities, we do not have an ecosystem for a company to appear. Basically, they work for research institutions. So what do we need to do here? We need to focus on the funds that are within universities or near the universities, who create an ecosystem, eco-environment for the development of spin-off labs. They help the heads of labs, and they immerse these research people in the startups, and they build an ecosystem within a university to make it the environment that would give rise to these companies, not stifle them. And I think that if we have these companies, if we have this in these conditions, if the investors are supported while they help companies to be created, I think we will have more and more tech companies that will be pretty formidable and will be something to be proud of. Thank you. Danila, thank you. Quick question to build on your remarks. You have been invested in Russian deep tech for the last 10, 15 years, and we are doing so as well. And you said that before 2022, import substitution and the consumption of the Russian technologies was just on paper. It was more of a declaration rather than a real commitment. But maybe the Russian scientists and developers have lost their motivation because they were trying to get into the heads of these corporations, and they just they just lost their appetite. They do not want to go along the same path, although the Russian economy is ready now, finally. I think that applied sciences cannot really lose the motivation, because unfortunately in Russia it has never been set up to build startups. The applied sciences, I mean, it is like that. But entrepreneurs, from a psychological point of view, it's become hard of them to work, so you have to support them. That's the way forward. And I think this nicely is a nice segue to the story that I wanted to share with you, that corresponds with what you have just said about our role when we start in Kama to find our place on the venture market and private equity market. It was 15 years ago, by the way, and it was even before 2014. It was 2011, 2012, and we have understood that all niches are taken. It was institutional investors and Western funds. There was a lot of local startups that were copy-pasting Western technologies. But this deep tech niche, this fundamental research heavyweight niche is not of interest for anyone. It's not on the agenda, and the situation is changing there, on the other hand, but it's not changing significantly. How many funds professionally and on a system basis and regularly invest in deep tech? Well, half of them are on the scene, right, on the stage right now, and maybe a couple of more here, maybe a couple of more within the country. And we understood that this is a blue ocean for us. We would be the first ones to invest in deep tech. And we understood that there are some critical attributes of deep tech projects that makes the work with these projects non-orthodox. And first of all, we're talking about the team. How do you gather the deep tech startup team? We just used our know-how to kind of grope our way through that. We have a good company that is engaged in magnet processing of the iron ore, but it is headed by a professor, academician. He's from academia, and he cannot go to the testing and improve technologies because he is a professor in university and he has his academic work. He's a very talented scientist, but not at all a good organizer, and let alone entrepreneur. So we decided to put some partners by his side, and there were a couple of PhDs who understand his technical language. At the same time, they are focused on business. They have some corporate experience, and we have seen that this model is actually working. And now we do not believe in the Russian deep tech startups that are working based on one very talented genius and scientist who is trying to do some business after patenting some technology. So as a business, we have to work as a smart HR agency. We have to shape HR policy and get the people on board. And the second thing that you have mentioned, and I think that it was also reflected nicely in the case, is that our deep tech projects are very much incorporated in the corporate structure. And so there's a very hard link. It's not a bad thing, but the integrators are developers. You always think of yourself when you do deep tech in Russia as someone who, like if you take one state corporation like Rosatom, you should sell your solution to the internal client. You cannot think of yourself as an entrepreneur. And we as investors have to make that paradigm shift to show that your markets and consumers and product ranges are various, and show them the international markets. And this is how you motivate the entrepreneurs and how you educate them. Otherwise, it will still remain the research efforts.
In deep tech, we still see very small focus on commercial result. It's always a team of scientists. They are academics. They are focused on their academic track. And combine academic KPIs and commercial KPIs is state of the art, and it's very difficult. What you're saying, I agree with it completely. We need to maintain and create such an environment, in scientific environment and at corporations, that would allow young scholars to make publications, to keep their scientific track, but on the side, to work with business, to work in university startup studios, to use university ecosystem, to use those people who are putting together endowment in universities. Unfortunately, Russia doesn't have many examples. There's Phystech Union in Physics and Technological University, which is Phystech. And also Tomsk and Novosibirsk have some universities trying this. But this system is not enough currently. We need more of it, and we're suffering. We have an innate mistake in deep tech in Russia. It doesn't allow us to boost, and we do not see here not only unicorns, but we're not aware of the success that Russian labs are doing. Every time we're laughing with colleagues, randomly you can find an inventor, and it turns out that this inventor has a technology that has been tested and patented and even licensed in Europe and in China, but it's no name, no investments, nothing. Nobody knows this person. So overcoming this barrier is our task. We all need to do this. And dozens of funds need to take part in this, not just one or two funds. Only then the quality will turn, the quantity will turn into quality. Those who drive deep tech in Russia. I don't think that us or you should drive deep tech. I think the community must drive deep tech, and they're at the infant stage, and community is dozens of funds. And we're getting back to the statement that these funds will emerge only at the point when we have long-term funding and when we have professional managers, business and scholars, people who are motivated to work with deep tech. This is why I'm very happy that we are thinking likewise here. Next, I wanted to mention one more thing on the other side. Marsel, we are experienced investors together with Danila, and we are saying that we are very friendly and very nice, we're very smart, etc. But you are on the other side of this. You are a scholar, an entrepreneur. How do you see this picture? What's your perspective? Is it comfortable for you to work with Russian venture market, and what's the future of Russian big tech? Could you give us perspective of the person who is learning his lessons only? Evgeny, thank you very much. Indeed, I was listening to you in the shoes of an investor, and I was trying to perceive it as a start-upper or the one who is building business. And at the start of my journey, I was trying to raise funds, seed or pre-seed stage. It was very venture stage. Currently, the business is larger. Even when I got registered to this conference, there was a questionnaire, and there was a question, do you believe that you are a startup or a corporation? I mentioned corporation, but on my page, I still have startup. It insults me a little bit, but okay, I can live with this offense. In this context, I would like to oppose a little bit in this conversation. I'm currently talking to funds that are investing at later stages, and one of investors told me an interesting thing. He told me, you can't be a bigger entrepreneur rather than the entrepreneur himself. Sometimes funds are trying to take responsibility for the entrepreneur. They are trying to engage him into their network, not only giving him funds, but also to help them networking. They're trying to help him to insert the best HR practices to this entrepreneur. But I believe it's extra, and this is something that we don't need. Good entrepreneurs who are truly motivated, they want to build something big. I believe they can absorb it themselves. The only thing they need is funding. Let me make an example. I had Back in the day when I just started my education in the Moscow State University, it was a chemical department. During the first year, we were doing a thesis on non-organic chemistry, and my peer comes to me and says, "We need to build Sigma Aldrich, the Russian one." Those who do not know what is chemistry, let me introduce it as Sigma Aldrich is a German company, a German business that produces, well, this is the way they position this, they produce chemical reagents. I know 5 teams in Russia, scientific teams in Russia, that produce the same. They do it in Russia. They consign it to Germany, and Sigma Orange or Thermo Fisher just put their label on it, on something that was produced in Russia, and then they sell it back to Russia. And my group mate sees it that it's unfair. The market shouldn't be working this way. He said, let's produce Sigma Aldrich ourselves. Even on the first year, people who have some expertise or people who have already started gaining expertise in a specific area, these students already have ideas. They're ready to innovate. They're ready to move in this direction. They're ready to try something here, to produce something, to change the world, to make a difference. I believe, indeed, we must help entrepreneurs, we must help them, but it should be initiated by entrepreneurs. And I know for a fact that this initiative is present in Russia. We have a lot of it. The only thing that we need to push these entrepreneurs a little bit and train them a little bit. Using our example, just join an accelerator, and the first thing you hear in accelerator, what kind of idea we need? We need a large, rapidly growing market that makes change. How many start-uppers understand it? I guess very few. Even if I'm talking about myself. Okay, we started producing Sigma Aldrich in Russia. On the first year, I had this idea, and I graduated from the Moscow State University. I spent 3 years in different startups and incorporations. Then, together with my group mates, we decided to build Group Aldrich. With the same group mates? No, not the same group mate, the other one. That one disappeared somewhere. So we decided to produce our Russian Sigma Aldrich, and we started making it, and we were succeeding, and sales were growing. But then COVID happened, and special military operation happened, and in 2022 we made 3 billion sales. In 3 years, it's good. But we started reviewing the market of chemical reagents. These are consumables in laboratories, the consumables that are used by DeepTech startups in order to make their research, chemical, microbiological research, etc. This market is relatively small. Indeed, Russian Federation allocates a little bit more than 600 billion rubles for science, for scientific purposes. I guess 20 or 30% from that is allocated to labs for our product, including our product. But it's not trillions of rubles. It's not that large budget. It's a small market. It's a relatively small market. In 2022, objectively, we realized that in this market, we will never become, as Danila said, we will never become a unicorn that will have trillions of rubles valuation. So we thought, okay, chemical reagents are good, it needs to be developed, it's a good thing to do, but also we need to have a look what else our science, our chemical industry is missing currently. Not only chemical industry, but pharmaceutical industry as well. Pharmaceutical industry also depends on chemistry, their production cost. severely depends on chemical elements. 80% of our sales are to pharmaceutical companies. This is why I'm talking about pharmaceutical companies. 1/3 of production cost of the pharmaceutical companies is production cost. Pharma costs 2 trillion rubles for production. It means that about 600 or 700 billion worth chemical elements are needed. And this is a much more diverse market. It's much more appealing. But in 2020, for some reason, when we took part at accelerators, when we spoke to investors of pre-seed round, nobody told us, guys, you will never earn $1 billion here. Never. So we thought ourselves, okay, so we need to go into a more promising niche. We need to provide chemical raw materials. Then we realized it, and we had billion worth sales in a year. We started digging into this direction, and we thought, okay, we're only importing. Why are we importing only? We have a good sales force. All our clients love us, and they respect us, and they want to continue working with us. They want to buy from us. But why would they buy from us if we imported from China, India, the United States? So we thought, okay, then we need to push for import substitution. By the way, we don't call it import substitution. We call it localization, because we believe import substitution, the term has a negative connotation these days, I would say. So we discussed that we should build our own production. We started interacting with scholars, with scientists, with business, trying to find out what they need, and we found an even bigger market and even more opportunities. We caught that wave of import substitution. We harnessed that wave. As Danila has mentioned, there are quite a few, I mean, I even could put it this way. There is competition for startups. Funds are competing for startups, but not only funds, but also the state is also competing for startups. And we have just spoken to your colleagues, and we're thinking, why would we talk to funds? Why would we sell our share in our future trillion-worth company to these companies when we can take out a loan, when we can become Skolkovo resident, and we don't have to pay VAT, and next year VAT is going to be higher, as far as I hear. And this is a good way of thought. And in our company, we're currently we're pioneering the mission. From scratch, we want to build the industry of complex chemistry. We have simple chemistry because we know, I mean, the whole country understands how to produce different acids, but the industry doesn't know how to produce polyvinylpyrrolidone. In Soviet Union, we had this production, but now it's put on hold, and we took this mission. And this is why we're interacting with scholars. Marcel, at the end of this speech, there was a question, and I wanted to address this question to you, just to sum up your statements. If we take financial function or lender or creditor function out of scope, what are the things that are related to added value to investor? What else could the investor help you with, to you or to any tech entrepreneur? Or do you believe that investments is just about funding and all the other things are really extra and non-necessary, excessive? Well, I had a negative experience of interaction with funds. The fund was advertising itself that would give us smart money. We asked contact details of one of their portfolio companies as a test task, but they couldn't give us that contact details with no justification. Since then, I have been very cautious about smart money. But I get it that investors and investment funds are networking in other circles at all. And in terms of networking opportunities, definitely there could be synergy with funds. They could help us with this. They will are on your board, and they will help you to find the right contact, or they will tell you, for instance, you're willing to do IPO in 5 years and you still don't have IFRS. Let's introduce IFRS reporting. So these recommendations are necessary, and networking opportunities, good contacts are necessary. In this scenario is definitely promising. But in case if the investor is more of an entrepreneur than you in your business, I don't believe in this. The main philosophical question is what you're raising right now. We keep on arguing about this in a comma flow. Can you teach entrepreneurship? And honestly, we don't have one point of view. We keep on debating about it for 10 plus years. On the other hand, if we look at our portfolio, and we have more than 30 businesses in our portfolio, we have failing and succeeding businesses, and it is always explained by the personality of entrepreneur. Our contribution and the team, of course, they're necessary, but as a result, the company is led by a leader, and in tech company, the leader is super important because this leader is super diverse and versatile. Not just the leader must do a lot of things, and I wanted to ask a few blitz questions, a few questions to you. Danila, let me start with you. Do you believe there is still a culture clash between investor and tech entrepreneur? Or is it not very relevant? We have the same language, the same ground, and there is no Chinese wall between us. Or is there a Chinese wall between us and we need to break it? It's a tricky question. Well, before I give the answer to this question, I wanted to respond to Marsel first. Obviously, you are in the effect of hot stove. When a cat jumps on a hot stove, it realizes it's hot, it jumps down, but the stove is not hot forever, but the cat is fearing to jump on that stove. So I get it. I've been there, done that. Answering your question, Zhenya, of course, it's difficult for funds to become a friend for a startup. In some perfect universe or in some series about Silicon Valley, maybe it's possible, but in real life, it's partnership, or like a marriage. We start a marriage, and this partnership is for many years to go. It's about that. You need to approach it with a lot of responsibility. You need to choose the fund like you're choosing a spouse. You can discuss rules of the game in advance, like an assignment or a core agreement or something like that. Maybe you could take a trial period first to exchange contact details, to take part in meetings together. So do thorough due diligence of each other. It's very important before a long journey of cooperation. It's difficult to become friends. However, I have heard of such cases, but it's not often. But about a win-win partnership, I think it's quite realistic. So you would recommend that this marriage must be based both on love and on mind. Yeah, it's quantum superposition. Marcel, my question to you, similar question but a little bit different. Yesterday you were a startup. Today you're a corporation. When you talk to young teams, I'm sure that you are screening some startups, that you are looking for young scholars. Do you feel that there is a gap in understanding the world in deep tech between you, mature startup, and young entrepreneurs? Let me give the following answer. When I do talk to startups and I notice one key mistake that I made as well 5 years ago, it's to the point of how scholars should interact with entrepreneurs and whether a scholar can be grown or groomed into an entrepreneur. My answer is no. And I have an example. Together with my group mate, that very group mate who was left behind, closer to that, yeah. So together with that group mate, I met him when I was on the 10th year of school. He was the winner, and I was ranking number 2. We spent 6 years in one group. He was in the chemical enterprise. I was more in IT industry. And in 3 years, when we graduated universities, we decided to merge efforts and to establish a Russian Sigma Aldrich. It's good that I brought another group mate of mine, and we started building it together, and we realized that he's a scholar. He has a scholar mindset, and it's difficult for him to make decisions. But for me, it was easy to make these decisions. For instance, take out a loan for entrepreneurship or invest my own 3 million rubles. I just do it in an instant, or leave a full-time job in order to focus on startups. I do it, but he's scared to do that. At some point, we spent 2 or 3 months together, and we realized that most likely we cannot work together. Currently, he is our employee. He is kind of a CTO, and he feels very good, and he gets a good salary, and he flourishes, and he's a genius scholar, a genius chemist, and we value him tremendously. I'm sure that he likes his path, and I tried to put on his shoes, and I thought, you could have owned 33% of our business now. Are you sorry about that? We wish you had it. But he's not sorry. Maybe he thinks, okay, you could have been a talented chemist and you became an entrepreneur. I'm very sorry for you, maybe he thinks.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's great that it has a happy ending. It's not happening like that often because it's hard to navigate the micro conflicts seamlessly, and the role of investor as a third party here, as a mediating party, is very important. I'm a kind of a corporate. Our role is a kind of a corporate psychotherapist, really. Quick strategic question: what would support DeepTech in Russia? 2, 3 key steps that would support this industry, and I'm not even talking about. I'm talking about this scientifically driven projects. What should you do? Well, that is a strategic question. What should we do? You should have people with high risk profile like Marsel. What has happened? One potential co-founder had a low appetite to risk, he was not ready, and the other one had a high appetite to risk. That's genes. It's very hard to use even psychotherapy to change that. So you have to create a very comfortable environment so that these people with this high risk profile can unlock their potential. And I'll be very general without any steps. But that's like so. These people should not at least leave the country. Let's start with that, or at least that would return to the country. Let's start with this step. This is something that might help. Marcel, what do you think about this environment? Environment, I like this term better than the ecosystem. But you, as a working tech entrepreneur, do you think that the environment is unfriendly? What should be done to overhaul it, to redesign it? Well, I'm not very competent in high-level decisions. I'll give you a take from my perspective. For the industry to develop, I need infrastructure. And I'm not even talking about financing and funding and decreasing the taxes or some high-profile things. I'm talking about my personal experience. And we decided to build an industry of complex chemistry. This is the infrastructure that is needed to high-tech startups. Why in China and in the US the research is done much quicker than in Russia? Because the reagents are more accessible, much more accessible. You push one button and next day the reagents are delivered. And here you push the button, you have Excel files to spreadsheets to fill out, you call. So you need to make sure that scientists have access to these reagents and this equipment. Why India and China are now leaders in chemistry and pharmaceuticals? Because they have a lot of small factories that produce this specific chemistry products that cannot be produced on a large factory because it will be very costly. So it's like a system of the small factories, and then the products from these factories are kind of combined and they do a much higher value added product. And we want to create the same system in Russia. We think that the prerequisites are there. Marcel, thank you very much. This goes not only for your industries but for IT as well. But just a short summary. I have been participating in many discussions like that, public and non-public, and I remember that people from the universities, from science and from the businesses were going to a meeting and were arguing with each other. Now we have many more connecting points. Yes, there are still some arguments, there are still some things that people are not happy with, but we have this synergy, and that gives optimism. Yes, there are genes. There's this 2% of entrepreneurs who have these genes, this risk-taking genes, and but creating the overall information field, in shaping the culture, helps the entrepreneurs that are still trying to test the waters, would help them to enter the field and to bet on something. So thank you very much. Thank you for your attention. We hope that we gave you some interesting insights.